Good evening, everyone. How are we all doing? I am Chris, and I'm back with another movie review. I am fresh out the cinema from Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This is easily one of my most anticipated films of this year. The original being one of my favorite animated films of, I don't know, the last 5 or 10 years. I thought Into the Spider-Verse, the original one, in 2018. It's making me feel very old. Time keeps moving. Was completely groundbreaking and absolutely annihilated any expectations that I had for that film in a good way. I went into that film not really knowing make of it. The trailer really won me over, and clips that I'd seen from it, and I thought, what the hell is this Spider? Because it's a Spider-Man film, but it's not the live action Spider-Man films, which we're used to at that point. It's kind of this offshoot thing, this animated venture that Sony are doing. Like, okay, let's see how it is. And I was absolutely blown away by that original film. Fantastic screenplay, vision for it, and just the animation in general. Animation for me is one of my most passionate genres, types of films, and people can do wonderful things with animation. I absolutely love it. And not to take anything away from animated films, there's good animated films that come out every single year, but I did feel like animation in general, nothing felt like that next level. A lot of stuff that I'd seen animation up until that felt like been there, done that. Oh, it's CGI animation. That's fine. I've just seen it a lot. It's got very me. And then I mean, I was seeing stuff in Into the Spider Verse that I'd never seen in an anime feature before. The visual design, the various artistic designs in that film. It was an amalgamation of all different kinds of animation style. You had anime, you had your traditional CGI, you had cell shaded stuff going on, hand drawn 2D animation, and as many different ones as you can think. Then kind of like cartoons animation, and it was all thrown together, and any other person would assume that was going to be an absolute clusterfuck on the screen, and it really wasn't. And a testament to Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who I actually can't remember if they directed the original film, but I know they wrote it and they helped produce it as well. They didn't direct this one. This was directed by Joaquim Dos Santos, Kent Powers, and Justin K. Thomas, but with a screenplay written by Phil Lord, Christopher Miller, Dave Callahan. And yeah, here we are at Across the Spider-Verse, which was originally going to be called Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1, and then we were going to have Part 2 next year, which I think is still meant to be coming out in 2024. I should check that. So they've been renamed. This is Across the Spider-Verse, and next one is called Beyond the Spider. So yeah, it's. I won't go into spoilers with this. I won't tell you how it ends or anything like that. But I will say that it does follow that trilogy kind of model of ending on some kind of cliffhanger, which is going to tee us up for the finale, hopefully. I love these films, and I'd love to see them keep making them if they were good, but I'd respect them more if it is a trilogy and it is a condensed story. I think there's talks of possibly a spin-off as well with Gwen Stacy, with Spider-Woman. I like if it's good, I'll for it, but I don't want them to oversaturate this story because, going into my review now, they're 2 for 2 on this one. I was really looking forward to this one, and a lot of my expectations with this film I can't talk. A lot of my expectations were can at least meet the quality of the original. It's very difficult to do with sequels because it's the first one ingratiates you into this world. It's usually a really good coming of age film or a hero story, origin story. And I like origin stories. I like seeing where characters start out from. And the middle chapter can be very difficult to get right sometimes. Happen with animated films, for example, absolutely fantastic. And there are some things like the Kung Fu Panda films as well, looking to DreamWorks, for example. And I was really hoping that this one would do justice to the original and hopefully, fingers crossed, be better than the original. Very difficult to do because Into the Spider-Verse, as I mentioned with the animation, I was shown things with that animation that I've never seen before. And I thought, well, the sequel's going to be doing more of the same thing, so maybe it won't feel as original. since that first Into the Spider-Verse as well, from Sony Animation as well, we've had a lot of copycat kind of films, if you will, of the animation. Spider-Verse was very new for me, but then you had stuff like it was the Mitchells versus the Machines, right, which was also made by Sony. Very similar animation style. And then we've had stuff like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, where that's DreamWorks. Again, a very similar Into the Spider-Verse kind of animation style. There's been a few other ones that have come out too. So because Into the Spider-Verse won the Oscar, and quite rightly so, I'm so grateful that it did. I thought there's no way that this film, Across the Spider-Verse, is really going to show me anything different or up the ante from what I'd already witnessed. How wrong was I? Pretty much from the off, I could see how bold the animators were and how they did go even further with the artistic style. There's 6 different dimensions across this film. Hell, maybe more, at least 6, and each one has its own unique art style. Without going into specifics, there's quite an elongated prologue to this film, which pretty much just entirely focuses on Gwen Stacy's character. And I actually think that was, I mean, this is going to feel like an epic. Once you've got Part 2 Beyond the Spider-Verse together as one big film. That's how Phil Lord and Christopher Miller wrote the film. They were writing the story for the sequel, and they realized that it was much too long into one film, so they decided to split it into 2. Usually when you get something like that, it seems like it's just a cheap marketing gimmick, but you can tell that Sony probably knew they were onto a good thing with this one. Apparently, the sequel was already being written before the first film was even released due to the buzz and the hype for it. I guess Sony were like, okay, this is going to be, they had faith in it, which is to see a company have faith in its product that it's putting out. And also, I get the impression letting the filmmakers make the film they want to make. Was reading into it a little bit. Avi Arad, one of the producers, or the longtime producers of the Spider-Man films, who, in my opinion, was one of the reasons why Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3 wasn't as good as the previous 2, was the inclusion of Avi Arad's man to shoehorn Venom into that film when Sam Raimi didn't want Venom to be in there. And Avi Arad's had some questionable things as well with the Amazing Spider-Man films and some of the input with there. But reading into it, and I'm going to get onto the villain of this film in just a second. Apparently, that was Avi Arad who lobbied for The Spot to be the main villain of this film. I actually applaud this film doing that. And I think that's an exception there where the studio, the producers or whatever, can work with the visionaries, the directors and the producer and the screenwriters and everything. And when you've got input from both and they can kind of meet, and that's usually when you have the best product. Yeah, it is nice to see sometimes, like an auteur's film where there's no studio control and they can just make the film they want to make. And if it's good, then the director gets all the credit. And if it's terrible, well, the problem of that also goes to the director. So it's nice to see that amalgamation of the two. But yeah, the movie at the beginning focused on Gwen Stacy, and I like that it built on that relationship between the two of them, because apparently the first film was going to focus on a love story, and there were, they were crushing on each other throughout the film, so it was present, but it wasn't really the focus of the film, and they want to build up on that relationship, and that's one of my strong positives of the film. Similar to the first film in many ways, there were moments where I was watching this film and I forgot I was watching an animated film. Which might sound weird to some people. It's like, well, how can you forget that it's animated? It's moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour and it's clear when you look at it. But the character writing, just the screenplay in general, the voice acting, the performances, everything feels so real, and it's great character stuff. We find Miles in this film obviously a little bit older, still a teenager, and he's still trying to make life work itself. We've seen it loads of times with Spider-Man. It's a kind of a part and parcel of being a Spider-Man character, is that you're balancing, your school life, your home life, and the life of a superhero, and it's difficult. The routine of it's very difficult, and relationships are slowly fraying and everything, and that's mostly with Miles and his parents in this film, in that he doesn't tell them that his secret identity, so they feel alienated, and he feels alienated. He's a kid. He's a kid, and he's trying to plan his future and know his place in the world, but also he's living this other life of Spider-Man. It's, as I say, it's something that we're no stranger to if you're a fan of Spider-Man. But that being said, just the character writing and the relationship with him and his parents, and there's scenes where, yes, the film is moving at a million miles an hour, but it knows when to rein back and it knows when to let characters breathe. And this is still Miles's story. When the film began, there's kind of like a 10 to 15 minute segment with Gwen Stacy. I thought, oh, is the focus going to be away from Miles? Right after that, you know exactly why we had to begin the film like that, because everything is so woven in, and Phil Lord and Chris Miller are fantastic screenwriters and know how to put together a movie where everything gets a payoff, or even if everything doesn't necessarily get a payoff in this movie because it ends on a cliffhanger, you know that it will probably all come to a head when we get to the next movie, Beyond Spider-Verse. And I really like Gwen's character, going through similar and tribulations to Miles, but a slightly different way. Obviously, she's from a different universe. The use of color and animation style between all of the different dimensions really adds to that character as well. Especially Gwen Stacy. I'm going to focus on her for a second. Now, I haven't read all of these other comics. I'm vaguely aware of stuff like, Spider-Man 2099 and Spider-Woman and Gwen Stacy being a Spider-Man character, Miles Morales and things like that. I haven't read any of the comic books, but I'm kind of aware of that stuff. If you're a Spider-Man fan, if you're like a die-hard comic book reader and Spider-Man fan, you are going to be out of your mind in this film. It reminds me of going to see a Deadpool film where there's lots of pop references to pre-existing superhero stuff. There's references to stuff from the MCU. There's glimpses of live-action Spider-Man and scenes from those live-action Spider-Man films. There's a really, really cool MCU tie-in with, I'm not going to go into it because I don't want to spoil it, but it's a character that was introduced in Spider-Man Homecoming and hasn't really been shown, and they haven't developed that storyline yet, but he gets a cameo in this. That's really cool. There's little sound bites and audio bites from Spider-Man material that we've seen across all different things: video games, cartoon series, comic books, live action. It's all there, and it's great. And if you're like, they clearly did their research with this film. I will say there are some deep cut references in this, I'm sure, to some Spider-Man and alternate versions of Spider-Man that you have. And there's a whole headquarters of them, so there's hundreds of characters, hundreds and hundreds of characters. And I think it was great films where, if you are a comic book fan and you eventually get this on 4K or Blu-ray or whatever, you'll be pausing it every single frame to try and pinpoint all of those different versions that you might know. Now, you see, I'm not privy to that, really. I know that there's loads of different Spider-Man, but I didn't realize there were this many. And I don't know if they've created some specially for this film, or if these are, as far as I know, from comic books. So as I say, the screenwriters and the filmmakers research on all of this comic book stuff, and the fans adore it, and they'll appreciate it, the diehard fans. The crowd tonight was absolutely packed, which was really nice to see. It's nice to see these films getting the support. I think probably from good word of mouth. I actually can't remember how big the audience was for Into the Spider-Verse back in 2018. I think there was a fair few in there, but certainly probably word of mouth after that film, the film winning the Academy Award, and people being on a bit of a Spider-Man hype at this moment with the video games and the Spider-Man 2 game coming out soon, the games that we've had in between, and not to mention No Way Home being a really good time at the cinema, and probably the last Marvel film that I will ever watch. It was fantastic. I actually the cinema was doing this cool poster, and everyone, as soon as everyone got out of the movie, everyone was flocking to this poster like flies round shit. And I managed to snag one of the last ones, actually. I have no idea where I'm going to put it, but because it was a great film, to get the poster. Really, really cool poster. Love the art style on it. And I will say that, actually, stick around for the credits. There isn't an after credits or a mid credits scene, but just the artwork. Just appreciate that artwork over the ending credits. The credits were just as riveting to watch as the rest of the movie. Similar to the first film, it does kind of start off a bit seizure induced with the production logos coming up on the screen and it's flickering. Never got any trailers for this film. Weirdly enough, tonight I was expecting to get like at least a half hour of trailers before this film came out because it's a big film, and no, it was just straight into the film, which was nice. It meant I got to leave earlier, which was cool. Yeah, so many people turned out for this film tonight, and you could tell everyone was just glued to every frame of this film. People didn't want to avert their eyes from it, and I wasn't conscious of time. I wanted this film to keep going. I was ready for it. I was like, let's just go straight into Beyond the Spider-Verse. I was engrossed in this world, in all of these worlds, in the characters, mix of what was going on. I was having a great time. And I didn't, not to quote an Aerosmith song, but I didn't want to miss a thing. Like, genuinely, I didn't. Every single frame, there's crazy amounts of stuff going on the screen. Point where I would call this a masterpiece in animation. It has upped the ante from that first film. Do I like this more than Into the Spider-Verse? It's difficult to say. Into the Spider-Verse as a film feels more self-contained, it being an origin story. This is clearly your second, your middle chapter. It's darker, it's more interactive. It's pushing the man to his psychological as physical limits, and it ends on a cliffhanger. It's very much is the everyone always says, oh, it's the Empire Strikes Back of this, but Empire Strikes Back really did set that, that benchmark, and it does follow suit in that regard. I believe even the director of the film has been quoted in comparing this in terms of its structure to the likes of Empire Strikes Back. I think it balances the characters really well. It puts Miles Morales at the focus. You've got Gwen Stacy there as well, and it's nice to see their relationship build. And again, tensions fray between the two of them throughout the film. We discover a lot more. Oscar Isaac, Spider-Man 2099, a character that I don't really know a whole lot about. But I love the way that Oscar Isaac plays it. The character, you understand why the character is doing what he's doing. He's not an all-out. He's not a villain in the film necessarily, but he is. Sometimes he is working against our protagonist, but you understand what. Again, good screenwriting. You know exactly why he's doing it. He's got his own reasons for doing it, and the character is very unhinged. We get the sense that he's been leading this charge to try and fix this Spider-Verse that's going on and these anomalies that are cropping up. He's working long hours. He's worked and underpaid. And he's starting to crack. He's starting to crack under the pressure and the huge weight of everything. Literally, the fate of the universe, Spider-Verse, resting on his shoulders. And I think that comes through in Oscar Isaac's performance and the Caroline as well. He is a very intimidating, imposing character. Let's see. There's a few I liked about the sequel is that was it a shame to not see some of those, like Spider Noir and what was it, Spider Pig or whatever it was called? Not Spider Pig, that's The Simpsons. What was the Peter Porker? That was it or something, wasn't it? The Looney Tunes character. Would it have been nice to have them in the core cast again, like the first time? Yeah, it would have. But I like that this film took the opportunity to introduce some new characters, and it does. We have. And again, I haven't read the comic books. I know that these are all real alternate versions of Spider-Man. We go to Mumbattan, which is a combination of Mumbai and Manhattan in one of the dimensions. And we get an Indian Spider-Man, and he's really cool, and it's different. It's a different location. You've got Spider-Man 2019. There's all these different ones. We get a punk rock Spider-Man voiced by Daniel, I think it's Daniel Kaluuya, who does Daniel Kaluuya. And the art style matches. It's what you get on punk rock album covers, and all of these animation styles, it just blends beautifully. Are there some moments where the breakneck speed and the frenetic speed of everything get a little bit too big? Yeah, sometimes. There's like a kind of elongated chase scene and you're just kind of overwhelmed with all of the strobe-like animation that's going on screen. It's craziness, but if you're used to that from the first film, you do quickly get used to that pace from it. And I don't think, maybe other than Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse, this is the accurate depiction of a graphic novel of a comic book come to life on the screen. It's the way they frame it, the way there's some beautiful cinematography in here as well, and it sometimes it feels weird for me to say cinematography when it comes to an animated film. I don't know why, because obviously cinematography is still a thing, and things have to be framed in a certain way, whether that's from the director or whether they have like a director of photography there. But there are some breathtaking shots in this film, and just the shot composition, everything. I mentioned about color earlier as well with the animation style. With Gwen Stacy in particular, there's a lot of watercolors that are used in her world, and when she's going through all of her emotions or whatever she's going through, whichever emotion it is, the color in the background almost complements what she's going through in that moment. Almost like I guess like a kind of mood ring type thing. Just you see these beautiful watercolors looking like someone's thrown some water on the colors, and it's all, you know, displayed. All it's gorgeous stuff. Really, really beautiful stuff, and you just got to see it. You know, I can't verbally express what it is that I saw in, but there's so many different art styles again that are all thrown together. There were some moments actually in the Miles Morales stuff, and I did keep checking around in the audience. The characters seem to be in focus, and the background almost kind of looks displaced a little bit, like it's blurred. It looks, you know, when you go and see a movie, you take the glasses off, and there's, you know, there's some bits in focus, but like the background stuff is usually way out of focus, and kind of you see two of it. I got that a lot throughout the film initially with the Miles Morales stuff. And when I walked into the cinema, I did see the stack of 3D glasses at the front, and I thought, well, what films are in 3D at the moment? I was like, I don't think there are any films in 3D going on at the moment. And I thought, did I accidentally book a 3D screening? Was I meant to grab some glasses at the front? But I was looking around the audience and no one else had it on, so I quickly ruled that out. But I guess that's just the visual style. I guess that's just the how the background has been painted, has, you know, digital art, whatever it happens to be. I'd love to see a behind the scenes of this film with the animation, because it's fascinating stuff, and they really have upped the ante. I don't know if this has set the record for most amount of people working on an animated feature, but I did read somewhere that it was over 1,000 people working on the animation from this film, which, considering they only went into production in I think animation work began in almost exactly 3 years ago. I think it was June of 2020 they went into production on the animation. This was ready to go apparently by 2022, but the release date was pushed back. So the fact that all of them got this together in 2 years blows my mind. And it's very rare now that I'll go and see a film and I'll have it's almost like the magician. It's almost like I don't want to know the secrets. I'd love to see a behind the scenes on this, but I'm just witnessing, without sounding like really wanky, like magic on screen. I really am. And I didn't think I would, because Into the Spider-Verse was so groundbreaking, I thought, in terms of the genre of animation. I'm so glad that it won the Oscar. And granted, I haven't seen all of the other eventual Oscar nominations that will go up for the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature, but regardless of what they are, some of them might even be fantastic films. Some of them might be beautiful animated films in their own regard. This needs to win automatically. And already, this might be a strong contender for my film of the year. We're only halfway through the year, and we've still got a lot of films to go. We've got Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning coming out next month, which is probably my most anticipated film of the entire year. Because, it was John Wick 4, which I thought I was entertained by it, but I wasn't too keen on a lot of problems. But, I still had a good time at the cinema. This is just light years above everything that I've seen this year so far. And then I'm hoping Dead Reckoning might be even better. Two very, very different types of films, granted. But what I love about this, Phil Lord and Chris Miller have done another wonderful job, is that they've balanced the spectacle. They've upped the ante on the spectacle in terms of what they can do and the limits they can take it to, or beyond the limits of what they can take it to. But fundamentally, the character writing, as I mentioned, I don't know if some motion capture was used in this as well some of the actors, maybe because the facial animation on the characters, there's so many subtleties in the performances of those animated characters that it's almost feels like maybe this was rotoscoped. Maybe they shot the actors in real life, maybe, and animated over it, or maybe film them in live action and use that as reference. I don't know what they did, and I kind of want to know, because I had this with Into the Spider-Verse, and I had it probably more so with this film. There were moments where the animation is so good, I just forgot that I was watching an animated film, and I was watching a great superhero. I was watching, it was drama, like great character pieces, beautiful scenes, of character, and people talking about superhero fatigue. I was watching this film and I was kind of comparing it to the MCU, because I mean there are references to the MCU in this film, but the fact that all those Disney led MCU films now, they feel so cookie cutter and predictable and just mostly terrible at the moment. I've completely dropped off the MCU bandwagon, and I've got no intention of coming back to it until the studios have a rejig, because I'm done. I'm so done. Smartest move ever that with the Spider-Man films, Sony have their claim to it, and they've planted that flag, and it's like, Marvel, you ain't, we'll character out, but it's on our terms. Seeing how the MCU's gone, I think it's the smartest move that they've done. And they've been on a roll. Yes, they have fucked up in the past a number of times, but with Spider-Man at the moment, been on a roll. Maybe not with the Spider-Man villains movies like Morbius and Venom 2. We've got a Kraven the Hunter movie coming out, so not much with those films. But in terms of the Spider-Man material, they're doing fantastically well. I can't wait to see the next one. Hell, I might even go and see this film again, which is very rare for me. I don't really get time anymore, and the free time I do get watching new stuff so that I can review it for you guys. But I might try and find some free time and go out if there's nothing on. And I went to see this in iSense, so I'd recommend watching this on the biggest screen that you can. It sounds so cliche, but if you enjoy the first one, this is even better. I was kind of mulling it over at the beginning. Is this better than Spider-Verse? It's as I say, Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse felt much more self-contained as a singular movie. This does end on a cliffhanger, which is going to lead us into that finale. But I think once all three are said and done, and hopefully if they cap it at a trilogy, you're going to have one of the best trilogies out there. Not even just like animated trilogy, but just film trilogies. There is no such thing as hero fatigue. And after seeing this film, I firmly believe that. Granted, it's not live action, it's animated, so it's got a different feel, it's got a different style to it, and some people may view it outside of the cavalcade of crap we've been getting from Marvel. But it's not superhero fatigue. That's not what's pissing people off. It's the fact for a lot of the films from Phase 4 and going into Phase 5, we've nothing but shit. And from the Disney Plus shows, we've had nothing but shit. They don't have chances. There's no scenes of real character. You're just watching films that are made by cookie cutter, going through the motions with little to no stakes. And this is a product of that has a real vision behind it and put character focus. You have spectacle, you have the great Spider-Man action in there, of course you do. You have great new characters being introduced in, but inherently it's always about the characters. And this harkened back to me to your classic hit. There's moments of heroism in this film, which I love. I love that in my superhero. Who'd have thought that I want superheroes saving people and doing cool shit in a superhero film, but balancing that with like really good character drama, and this film did it. I did want to talk about the villain real quick, and I'll finish on that. Wonderful stuff that they do with the villain in this. Now, when it comes to Spider-Man, in my opinion, when it comes to Marvel characters, there is no better rogues gallery for any Marvel character compared to Spider-Man. He's got it all. Green Goblin, Lizard, Venom, Sandman, Dr. Octopus, you name it. All of his villains are fantastic. The villain for this film, The Spot. I'd never heard of this character. I thought I thought, oh, it's probably a comic book reference or like a really deep cut one, but I thought, well, maybe they've made this villain up, or maybe it's a relatively modern villain. And I fair play to them for showing us villains we haven't seen on screen before. It'd be so easy for them to throw in, we kind of got a octopus in the previous movie, an alternate version. We had a Green Goblin in there as well. We do get the Vulture in this. That's not really spoiling anything. It's towards the beginning of the movie. So we do get villains that we've seen before, and there's references to other villains that we've seen before. But for a main villain, and Phil Lord and Chris Miller didn't want the spot as the main villain, and this was Avi Arad putting the foot down, saying, no, this is going to be the villain. And they did they researched the character. I think it's a really minute character, a really minor character from the early to mid 80s, I think it was, in the comic books, who has the power to move between dimensions and can create little portal, kind of localized and also dimensionally, which fits beautiful into this story. The character design itself, character immense growth throughout the film, and whilst not on screen loads, and the actual presence of the character being quite weak and a bit at the beginning, has shaped up to be one of the most devastating and threatening villains, all the Spider-Man villains, by the end of this film. The design for the character is wonderful as well. Initially it's very minimalistic, and it kind of mirrors the fact that the character hasn't really come into his powers. He hasn't come into it. He hasn't been taken seriously. He hasn't been fleshed out or built out from. So when you're sketching something, you have the construction lines. Usually when you're trying to get proportions from the face, you'll draw the L, and you'll have like a cross grid on the face where the eyes are going to line up and everything. And kind of on things like the ball and socket joint of the shoulder and everything. And he's made up of stuff like that. And it felt very rough, like a rough sketch, which was the whole point of the character initially. You're not meant to take the villain seriously initially. He's kind of a laughing stock. I actually want to see who voiced the character, because Jason Schwartzman. Why do I know that name from? Oh, okay. Yeah, I know who he is. But he almost did like Deadpool a little bit, like Ryan Reynolds. That kind of quippiness, that awkward humor that they have. But then through the film, as the character develops his powers, he's the cosmic possibilities of what this character can do are terrifying. It's almost like an outer body experience of the character as he's coming into his own and developing his powers. So he's not on screen loads with Spider-Man, but the ramifications of what he can do and where this is potentially going to tee us up for the next movie as well, beyond the Spider-Verse, is world-ending kind of stuff. So we've got the stakes there. We've got it all layered. It's all there for us. The red laid out for us for that next movie. And I just want that next movie. Give me Beyond Spider-Verse right now. But, I need to mention real quick as well, the soundtrack. Absolutely wonderful. Daniel Pemberton did the music for this. I believe did the music for Into the Spider-Verse. I'm just going to check real quick. Yeah, same composer returning. Great soundtrack, not just the score as well, which is great. When that Miles Morales theme kicks in with horns, it's there's that sense of heroism that you get, that you want to get from a superhero soundtrack. But also all the soundtrack music on there. Now, some of the artists and some of the kinds of music that are in there, there's a lot of rap, there's a lot of I don't know the genres of music, what they call it nowadays. I'm an old man, but it's not really my wheelhouse, but it works beautifully for the film, and it works within the film and the tone that they're going for. Fantastic soundtrack. If you are a Spider-Man fan, you will love this movie. There are so many references in there. I'm a Spider-Man fan, and I don't know probably 1/100th of the references in this film. Someone's a hard fan of the comics and you know your shit when it comes to Spider-Man, you are going to have an absolute ball at this film. You're going to want to pause the cinema screen. You're going to want to take it all in and appreciate all of these comic book references. This is a love letter to. I can't wait till the story unfolds. Full character acting, voice acting, animation, vision, screenwriting. constructing a story. It's all there. And I wish we had more films like this. I wish we had more superhero films like this. I don't want everything coming off an assembly line. I want classic traditions that can still break boundaries I've seen before. Case in point, this within its genre of animation, it's raised the bar. It genuinely has from that first film, which is I didn't even think was possible. And I can't wait for that next one. So, 35 minutes on this of a shorter review. I go into real specifics with this one, but I will say if you're a fan of the Sam Raimi film, look for those references because it was wonderful. It's great. And the Tobey Maguire films, Sam Raimi trilogy is still going to be Spider-Man, but it's great that we've got this too. It's really good. I'm looking forward to the new Spider-Man game now. Anyway, that'll do it for my review on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I want to hear from you guys now. So I know that it was day of release today. Some of you probably didn't get to it today, but when you get to it, I'd love to hear from you guys. Let me know your thoughts on this film. Did you prefer this to Into the Spider-Verse? Do you think it's a good continuation? Really, really looking forward to getting a conversation going with this one. Please do consider subscribing to the channel as well for more movie reviews, discussions, and live streams. I know I'm kind of a bit sporadic with the live streams, but we're getting a lot of movies coming out now. Summer movie season. We're practically in summer now. And I get big releases pretty much every single week. The next film I want to see is, I think it's called Sisu. It's a foreign language film, I think, action film. Critical Drink has recommended it on his channel, and it looks like it's getting a relatively limited screening. So I'm going to try and get to that this weekend if I can. Failing that, it'll probably be sometime next week. I do have Twitter as well. I'm not on there loads, but do feel free to give me a follow on there. You can find me at Hobbit Fan Editor. But mostly I post on my community page on my YouTube. So look on there. I am the Hobbit Fan Editor. And speaking of Hobbits and stuff, I would like Lord of the Rings content in some way, shape, and form. We've had the new Gollum game that's been released. I'm not buying that game at all. I'm not full price for that game. Almost certainly not. But I am watching some Let's Plays. So once I finished watching all 10 or so hours or however long the game is, I do want to do a review on that game in terms of the story and its faithfulness to the source material and everything. But I have for some Tolkien ideas. So if you've made it to the end of this review and you have any, please do drop me a comment or drop me a message or whatever, requesting what you do. That'll do it for me, guys. Have a very good night, good morning, noon, whatever time it is that you want to go. Enjoy Across the Spider-Verse, and I will catch you guys in this video. Everyone.